basis. They don't necessarily condition your views on everything. A guy's yelling fire in a movie theater, and we have to, just for a moment, take our eyes off of Leonardo DiCaprio and decide whether or not there is a fire and what we're going to do about it. These are questions we talked about earlier that you can't not answer. You have to answer these questions, and I think it's best for all of us that we be intentional about answering these questions, because we can't just walk through life not having them answered, or else they'll be answered for us by other people. So what you need to do is you need to read the books of people, and you need to talk to people that you respect. You need to give them the time to really investigate their position, and you need to find out what inspires them, comforts them, and empowers them, and sort of test what you think about that. And that's what I hope to do for the rest of my life. So without further ado, I'd like to invite the members of Apologetics up to the stage, and I'll introduce them, and then we'll have an open discussion. Thank you. Feel free to head out at any time. This is just going to be some open question and answer, some open discussion of things sort of relating to what I talked about. Do you want next one? Yes. Okay. Basically, what this group is, a lot of people don't really know about it because it's this. Which is fine. We painted our first cube. Is Christian Apologetics of Carolina meets twice a week on Mondays and Wednesdays at 6 o'clock. And we talk about this sort of thing. For the past 2.5 months, we have, my mic is still on. We've been talking specifically about Bertrand Russell's Why I'm Not a Christian, and engaging with that. And most of what I just said, that was just like the tip of the iceberg of the sort of things we've been talking about. It wasn't even a tenth of all the stuff that came out. But for time, I didn't have that kind of filibustering ability. So it's a really great organization, and if you're interested in finding out more, you can sign as you head out the sheets of paper out there, and we'll put you on the listserv. And if you want to write any issues that you'd like to hear discussed in this sort of format or in a more intimate apologetic setting, go ahead and write those on there too. We're looking for a next event. So right now, I guess, does anyone have any questions or anything they'd like to talk about? Yeah.
I just like to put some action and go to if the guy yells fire and you don't see a fire, what are you supposed to do?
You don't.
Like if the guy in the media yells fire.
Right. I mean, I would. Does anyone want to answer this? I think the thing is, I mean, yeah, if he yells fire and there is no fire, then keep watching the movie. But what you have to do is, when somebody yells fire, like at least where I'm from, people don't do that lightly. And I think if he yells fire and it looks like he's taking it extremely seriously, I would look very hard for a fire and seriously consider whether or not there is a fire. I love this metaphor language. Yeah. It's like we're arguing in poetry. I love it. That's what I would do. Is you can tell a lot by sort of convictions that people have about something, especially convictions like we're talking about the religious convictions that are so central. That really merit a long discussion, but I mean, if you don't see fire, you don't see fire. Thanks, man.
I'm just saying, I don't see any fire.
Fair enough. Anything else? Anything you want to talk about? Go ahead, everybody. It's not time. Any question for Shayla? Question for Shayla Hart. Anybody?
Yeah, something I want to say.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's another thing that we didn't really get to, but we noticed, talked a lot about in the essay that what we dubbed the Hitchens fallacy, after Christopher Hitchens, the popular atheist author, that's basically saying, I think I could have done this better than God, therefore God does not exist. Now, that's a complete logical fallacy because you're claiming to know more than being with infinite knowledge, which is obviously an impossibility. But I just found that Bertrand Russell hits on that a lot when he talks about the argument from design, and of course many other atheist authors like Richard Dawkins and of course Christopher Hitchens and what's the third guy's name? Sam Harris. Tend to basically write entire books around that one statement.
We've given ourselves the liberty of naming fallacies whenever we want to after people.
Hey. So guess what I was curious about is sort of course, you take Bertrand Russell's argument as stemming from empiricism, right? And I guess disregarding whether or not, this empiricism is rooted in rationality or irrationality or some sort of, altered perception. I don't know, I guess I'm just curious on any of your, I guess, not conclusions, but sort of ideas about empiricism and how empiricism has shaped your worldview, or provide, I guess, an interesting alternative to empiricism, or maybe a mix of both. Anything you want to talk about, I guess, with respect to that.
Can you first explain what that is?
Yes. Can you explain what that is? Pretty sad they weren't on one day either. Empiricism is a philosophy, correct me if I'm wrong on this, started in the 17th century, 18th century. Basically it means that all that we can know comes from basically the five senses. That everything that we know and believe comes from input that we've received from like the tangible world. And so it's very incredulous towards anything sort of noumenal, any sort of revelation or something like that. So it tests any belief against what can be tested and what can be experienced in the more tangible world. All right, thoughts? How has empiricism affected you? How have you used your Ronco-empiricism to better your life? Did you have an answer?
I have a question.
Okay. Well, I'll talk a little bit about that then. I don't think empiricism is correct. It's sort of fallen out of favor recently, which doesn't mean it's wrong. In terms of just its presupposition, like I think the problem with empiricism is that it can't ground itself. In that nowhere in the five senses, nowhere in just the way I interact with reality, do I stumble across the proposition that I can only understand reality by reality. So in that sense, it's self-defeating. And that's where I see it as sort of being the main problem with empiricism as a philosophical thought. I think it's better than rationalism. So if we were in the 18th century, I might be hanged. It's okay. I would probably be wearing movie clothes for that time period anyway. And then have no idea how to deal with this thing. But in terms of the way empiricism affects me, is it just that I think that we need to be, our society is pretty empiricist by and large. And I think that's due to the great successes that science has had, to the point that we now treat philosophy and, even the rise of psychology with Freud and stuff like that, we treat everything being under the realm of the observable world. And I think that is really cutting off a large part of what the world actually has to offer in terms of the realm of ideas, in terms of the realm of the soul, and beauty, and so on and so forth, that can't really be, or at least haven't yet. Bertrand Russell would say they would be eventually explained by the five senses and so on and so forth. I would say they haven't yet, and it's had its run. That's just my point.
So if you were to directly, argue against, what you saw as his argument, if you were to respond, you would admit to things such as, you would talk about beauty and things like that. Mm-hmm. Okay.
A beautiful mind.
Yeah. I talk primarily about Russell Crowe movies. That's what I was talking about. Which you can't account for that talent with only five senses. It's just ridiculous. The Master Defender, that's what I'm talking about. Goodness, he's a Cinderella man. You gotta believe in that. Yeah.
I was wondering if you could touch a bit more on the concept of hope and how that might be affected by different worldviews.
Who's got them? Fair enough. I'll talk. Turn the microphone off for a reason. What was the hope? The question of how hope is seen in different worldviews.
Yeah.
I think it's an important question because if you look at what I labeled the unavoidable questions, the questions you cannot answer, a lot of them have a wide variety of answers that can be given to them, and it's difficult to differentiate because the systems of thought that they propose are sort of like self-reinforcing. And then, I think the persistence of